Synergy is the last term I need you to understand when it comes to toxins. There are very few studies on synergy of compounds. I can explain synergy in a simple equation. Synergy is where you have 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 plus 1 equals 9. That's synergy. And biological systems have their advantage over non-biological systems, this thing we call entropy, that we can, we rebuild and we rejuvenate, whereas a rock wears down over time, right? Second law of thermodynamics for some of you Doctor Who fans. So synergy is what gives us the ability to do that. So it's very unique to living systems. But there's very few studies on it, and a large part of that is the government doesn't require synergy studies. So the trick is if 1 plus 1 equals 9, you can have the same situation where that same 1 plus 1, and now you put a third factor in there, plus 1 now equals 1900. So it skews the data. So the problem is we go, well, the blue dye number 4 is generally regarded as safe. And the aspartame over here is generally regarded as safe. But who knows what happens when you mix them together? You know, the nitro without the glycerin is no big deal.
There you go.
So what do we see this in studies? Well, one that really stood out to me was one that Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, who's from Australia, pointed out in a lecture. And it was a study where they looked at a known toxin. So we know lethal doses of compounds. You know, most compounds have to go through at least that type of study. How much would it take to kill a certain percentage of living beings? And so, you know, they get voluntary mice to come and be parts of these studies. And what they find is when they for whatever reason, they did it in this order. I have no idea. It wasn't clear in the article. But they took mercury, and we have a long history of understanding that mercury is extremely toxic. You know, it totally destroys the nerve system, although it's perfectly safe once we put it into your silver amalgams. Once again, there's probably a priest in the back there. You know. But we know what that is, and so what they did is they say, all right, if we take the lethal dose of mercury that we know will kill 1 out of 100 mice. So, you know, they give X amount, and they just keep cutting it back, till they find out predictably, if we give this dose to 100 mice, it'll kill 1 of them. Okay? And they did the same thing with lead, right? We all know that lead is also a bioaccumulative neurotoxin. And yet it's still totally okay to put in your lipstick. So anyway, so we have this lead, and we do the same thing. And when you combine those, common logic would say 1 plus 1 would equal 2. That if I put this amount of lead that would predictably kill 1, I put this amount of mercury would predictably kill 1, I'd end up with either 1, because it might affect the same mouse, or at the most 2, right? That logic would say that, but it didn't. It killed 100% of the mice. So then what they started doing was they started pulling back the dose on lead. Why they didn't choose mercury? I don't know. They chose lead. So they started pulling back the dose on lead. And what they found was they had to reduce it 20 times. 20 times. To kill 99. Just to get it to drop below the 100% kill rate. Yeah, but you know, there's not a whole lot of mercury in those vaccines. But what if you give them a whole bunch of vaccines between 0 and 18, and now you give them lead in their lipstick?
Yeah.
Nobody knows. There's no, maybe nothing. Maybe nothing. I mean, to me, logic says that doesn't make sense. It's probably something. How much is something? I don't know. But do we really need mercury in our vaccines? Do we really need lead in our lipstick? Do we really need lipstick at all? Really? You know, you can put lipstick on a pig, and you can run her in 2016.
Very good. That took a second.
I didn't say it, Obama did. Just quoting Obama, man. All right. So rather than giving you this whole laundry list of all these exposures of environmental toxins, there's all kinds of resources for it. One of the cooler books that we have but for this is that little booklet. What's the name of it? The little booklet. Food Additives. And the only reason why I say it is that one's got, it's really just, you can flip through it, look up, you're at the grocery store, you look at the label, and you look through the thing, and you go, oh yeah, it causes cancer, this one causes dementia, this one, And that's just individual studies, right? Because we don't have any synergy studies. Literally, a few years back when I did a much more exhaustive class on this, and you can get that video if you need something either to put you to sleep or you're really anal retentive. But I do have it available, and I searched and searched and searched. I could only find 5 studies on synergy. 5 peer-reviewed studies on synergy, on compounds. And they're all done by the same guy out of Japan. And it showed horrible stuff, like yellow dye. I'm making this part up, don't quote me on this, but it was like a brown number 40 when it does nothing to like gut bacteria unless you also expose the body to sunlight. Right? I mean, the variables are so crazy that I understand why they don't study them, but don't be naive, or ignorant. So you can do that. There's all kinds of stuff on that, and I don't need to give you that. So what happens is, some of you, I think that would be a great book for you to have because you need to start making this transition. Inevitably, I can save the rest of you a lot of time. People will finally come in and they go, this is crazy. Everything kills you. And I said, it's really easy. Don't buy anything in a bag, a box, or a jar. That's the point. Well, it's so hard. I'm so busy. Well, you'll have plenty of time to think about it in a hospital bed. Think of how much time you'll have. And now it's free. So where else do they come from? Yeah, there's really no such thing as free, right? I mean, you did see my tongue go, right? It might have been hard from clear back in the back row, Brett. My libertarian brother. All right. So some of these things are endogenous. Our bodies naturally make a lot of really nasty toxic stuff. I mean, just naturally. But our systems are designed to break that down. Every one of us creates an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase. Why? Because the very act of digesting carbohydrates creates alcohol. Right? So that's part of the feel-goodness of comfort foods, is you're getting a buzz. You're kind of always semi-drunk from the gut bacteria and what have you. That's also why you burp and fart a lot. That's why, I look at these carboholics, all these vegetarians. Oh, I eat totally healthy, I'm a vegetarian. I'm like, crud, you're still 300 pounds. I mean, what are you eating? That's a lot of carrots, So, because some of it's coming out the other end, I hope. Right? So you stick them in front of an x-ray and they're all bloated up with gas and all this bubbles, and it's because they're a brewery, All this CO2 and methane and everything else is being brewed as a byproduct of making the alcohol. All right? So we have that. But if you push it too far with, Jim Beam, you start creating problems in the system, you see? So some of it is endogenous. The question is if we're already loading our natural designed filter systems that naturally would handle the kind of regular endogenous toxins our body makes just interfacing with the environment in a natural way, and we overload it with a lot of unnecessary stuff that's either there for our carnal pleasure or our convenience or whatever, then it's no wonder there's so much cancer and diabetes. I just don't know why. It's like, duh, of course. Of course. So I don't want you to get too caught up into this. Just know that there's ways of eliminating these from our diets. So would we want to detoxify? Well, look. Anybody here actually done a real, not like that lemon maple syrup cleanse, but like a real detoxification program? Who all here has done one? Really did it. Not like kinda did it, but really did it. Now, what do you find just in general? How many of you that raised your hands, raise them again if you, well, let's do it this way. Raise your hand high. Okay. Now, within 2 to 3 weeks, how many of you had more energy? Keep your hand up. How many of you had less symptoms? How many of you lost some weight? How many of you slept better? How many of you had better mental clarity? It was easier for you to concentrate and focus. How many of you found that it was easier for you to control your cravings, particularly things like sugar? How many of you had increased libido? I wore out Song of Solomon. You know what I'm saying? All right. Ongoing. All right, so here's the thing, right? So if the rest of you that have never done it, how many of those hands went down on any of those? None. Get a clue. Get a clue. We should be doing this. It's my opinion that every person in this room and everyone you care about should be doing some sort of formal detoxification program at least twice a year. What's involved? Wrong question. Wrong question. You just need to do it. Ooh, how does it taste like? Who cares? It tastes better than getting your stomach pumped. It certainly tastes better than chemo. Get a clue. We live in a toxic world and we're not putting the genie back in the bottle. We will continue to get better. I have faith in human ingenuity. But the mass load, we've already crossed the tipping point. We have to assist the body in eliminating these toxins, and we have to do it on a regular basis.